This week's episode is in partnership with Intact Insurance, here for you and for everything you care about.
Wasn't it lovely? 2020's gone. It was shiitake. That's why I wrote this song. I hope we don't get sued for using that melody. This is the very first Jann Arden podcast of 2021. I'm with Caitlin Green, Adam Karsh. Caitlin is still pregnant.
Yes.
I feel like because the passage of time goes so slowly that you've been pregnant for 3 years, but it really is only the normal amount of time, and you've got about 9 weeks to go.
Yeah, I've got like 9 weeks left, which is now because I think Christmas eats up so much of your time and mental energy. And I was really looking forward to having some time off from work. So it was a marker. And now that it's over, I really have to think about all the baby stuff there is to do. And it is a lot. It is a ton of preparation. And I'm a type A personality.
What did the pioneers do, Caitlin? What did the pioneers do? They just kept working in those fields. That baby would come out. They would probably take the umbilical cord and just chuck it across the road. A crow would pick it up, and they would just be, bringing in the sheaves.
They would probably be dead at my age.
Well, that's true. You probably would be a grandmother by now because Caitlin is a whopping age of 36.
Yeah, that's 37. Oh my God, 37. I just forgot a year.
37. Well, we all do. My mom was like 63 3 years in a row, but she came by it honestly. Well, am I 63? She really had no idea. And plus she didn't know what her real name was. We always called her Joan, but her name was actually Mary. I said, Mom, what part of this story did you lose track of your name? Well, I don't know. I didn't see the birth certificate. I had no idea. And it was Mary Joan, but she said no one ever called me Mary. But I didn't know it was Mary at all. Anyhow.
That's funny. My first name is Mary, and I go by Caitlin.
Really? That's cool.
Okay, well, you two were made for each other. You and my mother.
Yeah. I go by Caitlin, but both of my grandmother's first names were Mary. So my parents wanted to keep the lineage of Mary as a first name, but they actually wanted me to go by Caitlin. So my full name is Mary Caitlin Alexis.
Okay, this is how it is. It's a beautiful name, but this is how this sounds to me. Yeah, his real name is Peter, but we call him Dale. Okay,
exactly. Totally.
It's those stories.
Oh, I joke that Mary is my good side and Alexis is my evil side and Caitlin is somewhere in the middle.
Oh, you guys are like a Dynasty episode. I can just see you guys brawling in the dining room, taking down the chandelier. There's so much to talk about. I mean, I feel like we could do a recap of 2020, but I feel like we've been recapping 2020 all year long. So True. I think there's a lot of relief here. 2021, I'm sure a lot of it is psychological, but as promised, we are going forward with a vaccine that is circumnavigating the globe presently. There's 2 different vaccines out there that have been approved in most countries. Canada is severely lagging behind. I know Ontario is trying to catch up. I heard news a few days ago of them trying to really get going. They literally are behind the rest of the country, and the whole country globally is behind. Canada is behind the rest of the world, and we need to know that. We always think we're Canada, rah, 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 but I'm telling you, we're way behind the rest of the world.
We are so far behind, and Ontario has pooped the proverbial bed so terribly. We have this retired general his name's Rick Hillier, who is supposed to be in charge of the vaccine rollout. And he went and did the media rounds earlier this week saying how, we made a real mistake by closing down the old vaccination clinics for 5 days.
Oh, really? Really, General?
You think? Do you think COVID just tucked itself in for a warm
This is a priority.
Nap? It didn't take a break. So why would we have taken a break? Now, the guy who's the head of University Health Network, one of our biggest health networks here in the city, also said, some of our workers were really burnt out, and that's why we gave them a few days off. But many, many, many healthcare workers are publicly saying, I would have worked 24 hours straight on Christmas Day to get these vaccines out.
I would have volunteered. I would have jabbed people.
Same.
I would have been like, tell me what to do. Does it go into the balls? Where does this thing go exactly? Where does this thing go?
Handed out Tang, I would have done up the back of hospital gowns. Like, so this is the thing. So I think now that we've screwed this up, although I would just love it if once ever, at least I can speak for our province, we were proactive instead of reactive. And that, I think, has plagued us. We're always behind the 8 ball. We know these things are coming. Our experts scream about them. And then we go, we get premier, self-proclaimed premier dad gets up and says, well, friends, it looks like we have to. I'm like, can we just do this in advance for once? Can we see this coming for once?
It does. It makes you wonder who's running the world. Spain's doing something interesting. And I'm really curious to get your guys' take on this. Spain is going to be keeping a registry of people who don't take the vaccine. It's not going to be a public thing, but they are absolutely taking a registry and they are sharing it with the rest of the EU. So I think border controls and things like that. And I do not blame them one bit. It's like looking at a chart of 2 mice making 20 mice and those 20 mice making and in the course of a year, there's something like 1 million mice. I'm not kidding you. So this is what COVID is. Anybody looking at a chart, I know they used matchsticks for a while and pushed one little lit match out of the way to stop it.
Yeah.
To stop the spread. So because people need basic graphs, as you know, they need something really basic to look at. What do you think of keeping a registry in Canada for people that don't take the vaccine? Because listen, going to concerts, going into movie theaters, seeing art, I think we have a right to know. And we shouldn't be around people that do that. I think there should absolutely be a card. And I'm sorry, I'm not saying you don't have to get it. And I'm not saying it should be mandatory. But if you do not take it, in my opinion, sorry, you don't get to go see ABBA. You don't, well, you know what I mean? So
I'm with
thoughts.
you. I'm with you. That's, I mean, I realize, I understand people are going to say, hey, it's an invasion of my privacy and it's none of your business and you do you and I'll do me and don't worry about it. But I mean, considering the severity of this. And
it's not public. It's not like you're being published to the newspapers. This is more along the line. And you can't tell me, that it's not important to keep the population safe. But I guess Caitlin, I want you to weigh in on this because I really want you to know what you think.
Well, I think it's like, I mean, as with anything with your personal health information, like number one, it's going to be kept very safe. Like it's going to have to be like HIPAA compliant. They're going to have to do all their, appropriate work to make sure that this is for internal uses only. It's not, like you said, it's not going to be published in the newspaper. You're not going to be walking around, with an A on your head for being,
the scarlet letter. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's because, it ultimately is a personal choice. And so there is that to take into consideration. It is a massive public health issue. Like so many things. It's a highly contagious virus in some cases. And they need to know. The government needs to know. They need to know who has had the vaccine. They need to keep track of it, frankly. And they just need to do that for basic public health information. It's one of these things that I think is probably like everything now, unfortunately, going to be politicized. But it's simple stuff. It's like you keep track of it. If you don't want to get it, you shouldn't, like, if you decide not to get it, I don't think you should be ashamed of not wanting to get it because that's your personal choice. Right. And so, but you should know.
But you have to understand you can't go on an international flight. You can't go on a domestic flight. Like, I feel like, you live your life, but it's going to be pretty local.
And it may be temporary because I think like many other vaccines, once we do reach that herd immunity level, the people who haven't gotten the vaccine, their freedoms might return. But, all you have to do is look at the cases of German measles outbreaks that happened in Europe once once everyone's vaccines expired, because you do have to get boosters. And because of the anti-vaccination sentiment and the concerns around vaccinations, a lot of people didn't re-up on their boosters. So when those boosters expired all at the same time across Europe, you saw this massive outbreak of German measles. And they do have to protect against those types of things happening again, throwing us into lockdown and throwing us into economic crisis. So the government has to be responsible, and some people won't like it, but that's just too bad.
Well, it is about like striking some kind of balance. Listen, my hand's in the air. I know I'm way at the back of the line to get vaccinated, but I so am looking forward to getting it done and kind of moving on with my life. I just, like I said, this whole year has just been, well, it's 2021 now. Let's see what happens. I mean, it's obviously looking a lot different because science has come to the rescue. And I still am gobsmacked by that we have a vaccine after 10. It just really is a human miracle. We're vaccinating the planet.
Mm-hmm. The cool thing is like the Pfizer vaccine really helps it reduces the severity of symptoms such that should you contract COVID, it's not such a big deal. There are lots of promising studies being done around the Moderna vaccine to show that this one actually helps reduce transmission altogether, which is great. And this one is the one that doesn't have to go into that deep freeze, the Moderna one. And so they can do things like take it to the long-term care homes and vaccinate people there. You don't have to move them to take them to the storage facilities where they're keeping this Pfizer vaccine at really cold temperatures. So even as we're going along, it's changing from vaccine to vaccine strain. And it's fascinating to watch. And again, a lot of people, when they hear us say, oh, this came together in under a year, they would go, well, that's why I don't want it, because it can't be safe if it quote unquote should take 10 years.
Well, you brought this up, Caitlin, that this research has been going on for years, since SARS and MERS. So a lot of the baseline research that they started with were for, sorry, I'm so sorry. I have a bunch of deer.
Mitty wants to chime in.
Mitty's like, get vaccinated. But you brought that up, Caitlin, that, this stuff's been going on for a long time. She's barking because there's now 2 deers on my deck.
Oh my gosh.
Mitty, no, we're not going over there. I know. And I hate to admonish her. Listen, we're going to be back. I'm going to go deal with my dog and the deer. You're listening to the Jann Arden podcast with Caitlin and Adam, and we shall return.
Driving during our Canadian winters means being ready for anything, and that requires planning ahead. In my case, once I've secured my most precious cargo, aka my dog, and an ample selection of beverages and snacks, I make sure I've tucked away stuff like flashlights, warm blankets, and a first aid kit. You know who also likes to be prepared? The good people over at Intact Insurance. Their blog, which you can check out at intact.ca/advice, is filled with tons of useful tips and information and articles to help you and your car get ready for cold weather.
We're back with the Jann Arden podcast and show. Yes, it's 2 in 1, folks. You're getting a podcast and a show. Some cray stuff going on in the world. And we have to talk about this because Caitlin and I have been discussing it for the last couple of days. And it's the Hilaria Baldwin Spanish accent extravaganza. This woman was born in Massachusetts. And I hope I said that right for all our American fans in Boston. And she's married to Alec Baldwin. And recently, as like in the last couple of weeks, she was exposed by people that went to high school with her in Boston, claiming that, listen, this woman is not from Spain. She doesn't have an accent. She was raised the same as I am. But it's been really funny to watch unfold. And she's even gone so far. She's a TV personality. She does some cooking segments, and I'm not sure exactly what the premise was, but they were talking about vegetables, and the word cucumber came up, and she's like, "What is the word?" But here, Adam's going to spin the clip, and then we'll come back and discuss.
We have very few ingredients. We have tomatoes. We have how do you say anything? Cucumbers. We have red pepper.
So what'd you think of that, Caitlin?
This is my favorite story of the holidays by a mile. I just love it. It's so entertaining. We all know that person who lived abroad for, a year and came back calling the subway in Toronto the tube, or referred to their apartment as a flat. Like the person who picks up the accent within 2 seconds of being anywhere. And like, it's fine. It's harmless. It's one of the more harmless things you can do in life. But let's be honest, it's cringy. It's cringy. It's annoying. It's posery. People don't like it. And you should expect to be roasted for it mercilessly if you are one of these people.
Why do you think people assume these cultural identities? And how did she go so long without anybody knowing about it? So, you know, she's married to a celebrity. You'd think that TMZ or some of these people would be digging up that, you know, Alec and I want to raise our children, you know, Spanish and English, you know, to be true to my culture. And you're listening to it going, wow, this is what kind of bonkers stuff is going on in a person's head. And you remember in the last 18 months, probably going back 2 years ago, there was a woman, gosh, her name escapes me, and maybe you guys can write in and tell us, but she was claiming to be an African-American, a Black woman.
Rachel Dolezal.
Yes, yeah. There you go. And we've talked about her on the show briefly at the very beginning. And she literally claimed Black heritage for her career. It was a big point in her career because she talked about African-American issues. And she was a professor at a university, correct? No, she was.
I don't know if it was a professor, but I mean, maybe she was at like DeVry or something. I don't know what she was up to.
Well, there you go. Maybe DeVry will not sponsor us now. But yeah, so she was, I mean, this is a white woman claiming to be a Black woman. And, you know, anyway, it's just bizarre.
I would think it's people who want to seem more interesting in some way. There were, of course, now you get into the real TMZ bloggy type rumors that said, Hillary, whatever, was very aware of Alec Baldwin, and someone had informed her of him striking out with Selma Hayek. So a lot of gossip columns started saying, oh, well, she was doing it to try to be more attractive to Alec. I don't know if that's true, but what is definitely undeniable is that she has, over the course of a decade, been captured on every single platform possible, faking an accent. Like, it is one thing to say, I pick up a little bit of a muddled accent here and there because my family has historically spent time in Majorca, right? Like, we have a home there, whatever. That's what she's claiming. It is another to pretend you don't know the word cucumber in English on Good Morning America. That is crazy.
Well, and of all words, cucumber.
How you say this in English? A cucumber? I'm like, give me a break. And now she's trying to play the victim, which I cannot stand. She should have just waited for this to pass. Let everyone laugh at you. Go away. It's frankly hilarious. You got called out.
And has Alex said anything?
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, he had to pipe in. And I thought there has to be, like, I did not think that she would be giving him a run for his money in the crazy person department in that household. But apparently so. And he posted this big unhinged kind of takedown of, you know, what he thought was social media. And he has some valid complaints, and he's a smart, talented guy. But he tried to defend her. And I think it's like, put the shovel down, Baldwin household. Like, just back away from this and move on, because it's funny. It's just funny. You can't blame people for laughing at it.
There's tinges of a Canadian couple in there somewhere. Anyway, moving on. How would you like to be Petula Clark right now? And the song Downtown. And let me just explain a little bit. The explosion in Nashville a couple of weeks ago, which was horrific on Christmas Day. He was in a motorhome, this guy that was apparently a suicide. They're still unraveling the details of it. But on the loudspeaker, first of all, he was telling people to get out of the area, which on some weird level, I appreciate. Because I don't know if I would have believed that walking around Christmas Day evening, listening to a van going, please clear the area. Then he starts playing Petula Clark's Downtown. When you're alone and life is making you lonely, you can always go downtown. This was the song that was playing through the speakers when the bomb went off. And I'm just thinking, of all the branding in the world, to have your song associated with that kind of a thing is, if that were to happen to me, I know this is a stupid thing to say, there's much bigger things going on, but I used to love that song, and I'm telling you, I don't know if I'll ever listen to it again. It's just changed everything for me. Like, what people can do. Obviously, the man didn't have rights to use music for anything, but especially for something like that.
Well, I mean, and also too, I didn't even know that detail actually about the story. to be honest. I feel like the story has, it happened over the holidays, so a lot of stuff is kind of lost in the holiday mix for people. But I do think it hasn't been covered the way, let's be honest, it would be covered if this guy wasn't white. That's my honest take on it.
You're not wrong. I think this would be a completely different narrative had this been an African-American man. Yeah. I still think it's a form of terrorism to do something like this in a public place. And I don't know why when people go to,
they're also shying away from calling him, like, I saw a couple of people who were, commenting on it, journalists commenting on it on Twitter saying, why won't XYZ publication just call it what it is, which was a suicide bombing? Why are they shying away from it now? If the investigation is still ongoing, that's one thing. But he did die. That's what they believe now, that he died in the explosion.
Well, there was pieces of him. They found little pieces of him that they did the DNA on. Like there was nothing left of the guy.
Yeah. So now they know that it wasn't like it was an empty van. As a result, I didn't even know that about Petula Clark. I don't feel like I know the details of the story the way that I would maybe know all the details of other stories. I don't see it being covered in the same way this time around. Part of it, again, could be Christmas, could be that people are sick of bad news, but
we're going to come back with good news, sexy news. You're listening to the Jann Arden podcast and show. We'll be right back.
Driving during our Canadian winters means being ready for anything, and that requires planning ahead. In my case, once I've secured my most precious cargo, aka my dog, and an ample selection of beverages and snacks, I make sure I've tucked away stuff like flashlights, warm blankets, and a first aid kit. You know who also likes to be prepared? The good people over at Intact Insurance. Their blog, which you can check out at intact.ca/advice, is filled with tons of useful tips and information and articles to help you and your car get ready for cold weather.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Where did you guys go? What did you guys do when we were gone? What was happening? Because we were gone. I don't know. On the podcast, when you hear it, there's no break in between, is there? It just rolls straight through.
Right. But the radio station version, there'd be a commercial break.
The radio station version, if you're hearing that, there was a commercial and we were just hanging out.
I've had some people ask and say, like, well, why do you take a break sometimes? Or you say, we'll be back after the break. And it's because we air on terrestrial radio stations. So we have to format the show to suit radio clocks, like commercials and all that jazz.
We're a very big show, ladies and gentlemen. We're not just podcasters. We are on the actual radio. You can hear us like across the country on, just turn your dial and find us on Saturday or Friday nights or Saturdays. When is it on, Adam? Friday nights?
I think Saturdays. I'm not sure of all the affiliates, but definitely Saturdays. I think even Sundays. Maybe it's
Saturdays
repeated.
And Sundays.
Yeah, mm-hmm. I don't think Friday nights, but I could be wrong.
Well, all you have to do is hit that subscribe button, and you don't even have to worry about it because your phone will remind you have a new Jann Arden podcast episode to listen to. Here's something to ponder. We all watch shows these days, and television, let me tell you what, has been huge for all of us the last year. Like huge. We've streamed everything. There's all those memes of going, well, I'm done Netflix. What's to watch now? Anyway, so there's a new show on Netflix called Bridgerton. And it takes place in like 1813, and it's about society girls parading themselves and finding a mate, with men in London. Anyway, there's some really, really racy, and I'm talking about inventive, like out of this world love scenes, romantic sex scenes. And they talk to the cast about it. And they have an intimacy coordinator. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
Oh yeah, I have heard of that. Yep.
That's
well,
wild.
When I read the words, I'm like, an intimacy coordinator. I could have used them in like the late 80s, like really, for a few things. But they have someone coming in like to work with these young actors of coordinating every kiss, every caress, where the camera's going to be, how to cover up the bits, how to make it, and they're just wild. Like it's almost like fight choreography. And I'm watching this show now on Netflix, and it's sort of, I cannot stop thinking about the intimacy coordinator having a hand in all of it, So I'm watching for all these things, like when the woman gets flipped over and this happens, I'm like, whoa, it's almost like, what did they do this on? Like foam mats when they first tried doing it all?
I've heard of the show. I haven't seen it, but I've heard of the show.
They serve a really important purpose on sets, actually. And it's funny that you bring this up because a show I really enjoyed this year was one called I May Destroy You. And it's centered around sexual assault. Yeah, I love this show. God, do I love this show. And it's centered around sexual assault. And one of the questions I was watching in an interview with the cast. And so one of the questions was to the leads was like, how do you deal with this and not have it upset you? How do you not take a rape scene home with you at night? And it's the intimacy coordinator. It is treating it like it's a job.
I didn't know that. I didn't know.
Yeah. And it works even when you're not dealing with sexual assault. So like a lot of women on set over the years have talked about how their boundaries were pushed when they were doing sex scenes, or they'd felt like people tried to get onto a closed set so they could see them naked. Like a lot of really exploitative behavior in Hollywood. And these intimacy coordinators create professional boundaries. They make sure that all the actors are comfortable. They communicate with the directors. They ensure there's a closed set. So it's such an important role. And it's so cool that they are doing it in shows now. I mean, I'm sure they do a little help with, like, do you guys remember the scene in Love Actually where they have the couple that gets together and they meet on set when he's like, they're both lighting stand-ins for a porno?
Oh, that is the funniest. They're standing there doing, things that the actual porn actors will be doing, but they're having delightful. Well, we should really have tea sometime. There's a lovely place down the road if you'd like to after work. Oh, that would be lovely. They stay true. I mean, how people like that end up in those roles is beyond me.
So I'm sure there's a bit of what you're talking about, Jan. Like I would love to imagine that it's like the sex equivalent of a stunt coordinator, like Bruce Lee kind of thing.
In Star Wars, this big fight scene. Okay, well, you take your arm and you throw it down. Well, I had never heard the term until just really super recently. And it made sense to me because I think the question, when I started acting like 2 years ago on the show, I had very little experience. And the first season I had like a big makeout scene with this beautiful Indigenous man on a tour bus. And, it was nothing. There was no nudity or anything like that. But I was so scared and nervous. Yeah. And I had talked to some of the other actors, like, what do you do? What kind of discussion do you have? And my friend Danny Kind, shout out to Danny Kind, who's on Workin' Moms, plays Anne on Workin' Moms. She said, you literally go up to the person you're doing the scene with and you say, what is acceptable to you? Mm-hmm. What do you want to do? Like, do you want to go full on tongue when we're kissing? Do you want to put your hands on my buttocks? Like, what's happening? So here's me. I march up to this. I got to find out his name. Adam, can you find out just season 1?
Yes.
Some of the
I'm Googling it. IMDb'ing it.
Oh my God. He was the nicest guy. Beautiful, tall man. I see him in so many things and I can't believe I can't remember his name. Anyway. So I just went up to him and I said, listen, how do you want to do this? Like, just full on kissing. And we did talk about it a little bit, but I didn't have an intimacy coordinator. Mm-hmm. But we had to do that scene, I'm going to say 10 times because there's different camera angles. And it's me throwing myself on his lap and like kissing him really hard. And my mouth and my jaw was sore afterwards. And he's married. He's got like a beautiful wife. And when I saw him at the screening, I'm sure I turned 40 shades of red because he was there with his wife and she was like, Jan, this is blankety blank. And I was just like, oh my God. And I don't know how actors do nude scenes. I don't know why I'm bringing this up to you guys, but I think every time, and Lauren Hammersley, I want to bring that up she's an actress. She's on, a show called Virgin River. She was on Mr. D for years. Do you know who it is, Adam?
Is it Julian Black Antelope?
Yes, Julian. Thank you.
He's a handsome man.
He's
very
beautiful.
Handsome man.
Anyway, Lauren Hammersley, she wrote a teeny little op-ed on her Instagram a couple weeks ago saying,
that love scenes and sex scenes were completely unnecessary in television and in movies, like the full out simulating sex. She just felt like it was just a completely over the top thing that didn't need to take place, and that she was endlessly uncomfortable doing those scenes. And I think there's quite a bit of that in Virgin River.
Yeah, I think that there are some scenes that it feels gratuitous and exploitative, like you know what they're doing, and it almost makes me at least step outside of the plot line of the film or of the television show for a second and go, oh, well, you just threw this in for the sake of it, right? It's like when something weird happens. It's kind of my issue I've had over the years with like David Lynch, where I call it weird for weird's sake, and sometimes it's just sex for sex's sake, and I don't like that, because I don't think it adds anything, and I think it actually takes you away from the character development. And obviously, over time, it has been really problematic for a lot of female actresses. They've all talked, most of the big names in Hollywood have talked about this as being an issue at one point or another, at one film set or another. But I do like it in some. I mean, I like a well done scene in certain movies, like especially I think in movies where you don't normally see, especially same sex relationships, where for so long you didn't see that in any sort of like representation.
No, I mean, kissing and being demonstrative, it is, and it's important, but I think it's going to these limits to these places where, if I remember watching stuff with my parents back in the day, they'd come over to my house and we'd watch a movie in the basement. I wouldn't know what was coming. And when that came up, I couldn't hit fast forward quick enough.
Oh, gross.
Because my mom was like, my God, how did they even get their leg like that? My Lord, well, where? And my dad would say, where the hell's the camera? Like, you know? So I had to listen to the peanut gallery narrating a sex scene in front of me, and I was just like mortified. I watched a show called Ammonite just before Christmas. Anyway, Adam wants me to wrap it up, but there was it's
Finish your
Kate
story.
Winslet and Saoirse Ronan. Saoirse Ronan, and there's a very big love scene. But I'm telling you, it's hieroglyphic. I'll just put that out there. There's a lot of stuff going on, and I'm just like, wow. Anyway, we won't talk about that anymore. It's just, if I'd been sitting there watching that with my grandparents or my mother or my sisters, or anyway,
you needed an intimacy coordinator just to watch it.
I did.
Good one.
We'll be right back. Thank you, Caitlin. Hi, we're back, and we were talking about intimacy coordinators, and I do want to put a button in this conversation, because I don't want to sit here and sound like a prude. Like, I like seeing that kind of stuff too. I think it's erotic. I think it's healthy. I don't think sexuality should ever be omitted, but I think there's limitations. I mean, obviously I have my limitations where I'm just like, because I worry about the actors so much. I worry about the actors. So I leave the movie. I leave the film because I'm worried about who's in the room. And I don't know why. Maybe it's because I have a little bit of experience now on a set with 70 people. I know these sets are closed. A lot of times it's the cameraman, the director, and the actors. That's it. The lighting, everyone leaves. There's no one around. But you made a good point. Like for anyone that's seen The Lighthouse with Robert Pattinson, I mean, there's a scene where he's making out with the mermaid thing.
There's a scene where he's not making out with the mermaid thing. He's alone with the mermaid like figurine, and he's very excited about the figurine. We'll leave it at that. And it's intense. It is very, very intense. He is quite naked. You don't see, it's not full frontal, but it's, that would be a closed set situation.
So are you saying that that's an important part of that storytelling? You also mentioned The Favorite with the wonderful Olivia Colman and Emma
Stone and Rachel Weisz.
Yes, and it was a wonderful film about their intimate relationships with the Queen at the time. I
think when you use sex as an accurate representation of what's happening in the story, and so like in The Favorite, it very much was a representation of the power struggle that was going on, because also you have to remember that on set and in real life, there is a power dynamic to sex. And so I think that's when people can be exploited.
I never left that film. Like, I didn't wander off going, oh my God. I was so, everything was done so impeccably. So maybe that's the gauge where you're like, now this is too far, but then what's too far? That because somebody else might not think that. It is personal.
It's personal.
So
like,
I need to shut up.
I don't agree with people thinking take it out of movies and there's no place for it anywhere, because there is. Like,
I'm not saying that at all.
Yeah.
Like that's why I wanted to come back and discuss this a little bit, because I think it's so important. We in this culture already have too many issues with sexuality. Yeah. And that people don't have access to sexuality. You know, I have really strong views about prostitution being legalized and not, you know, because there's just people that have no access to sexuality. Yeah. And it makes, and that's, well, I try not to be a prude, but anyway, I just wanted to kind of clarify that it is a personal choice. And I did phone my friend in London to warn him not to watch Ammonite with his 84-year-old mother and his 82-year-old aunt. And he was very grateful. He says, we watched it on our own and it was quite shocking.
Yeah. Because there are, like you said, there are the scenes where it takes you out of the film or out of the TV show. I found that with Game of Thrones sometimes. I felt like they were just doing it for the sake of doing it and for like the scandalization of having nudity. And it went on for too long and I was like, oh, okay, we get it. And then there are moments like in The Lighthouse where I was like, this is actually representative of what's happening with the character, or in The Favorite, so I don't mind. And then there are the cases like the movie I referenced to you in the break, Blue is the Warmest Color, where I actually thought that it was great for the characters. And then after the fact, I found out that those two actresses were really uncomfortable with what they were being asked to do by the director. So again, that's the old intimacy coordinator's job nowadays.
Well, you wonder if that film would be made now.
Yes.
Just because of that. Anyhow, moving on, I thought this would be kind of fun. Of actors and actresses that were quite well known at one point and now find themselves doing what people deem as regular jobs. Tara Reid is, we all remember her. She had, quite a few troubles with alcohol, but she was really popular on some of those teen things.
American Pie, right? Wasn't she in American Pie?
American Pie, but she did a couple of series as well. I think she did really well for herself and then had some trouble. Anyway, she's now a restaurant owner, which I think cool. So Tara Reid is a restaurant owner. Bo Derek, what do you think Bo Derek's doing now? Bo Derek was in that very famous movie 10, speaking of sex and sex scenes. That was so fun because it was Dudley Moore falling in love with the most beautiful woman in the world. And she was considered the most beautiful woman in the world for a great number of years in her life. Like, where do you go with that?
I think she was my sexual awakening. Is that what they call it?
Oh, no.
Like when I was a kid, I think
great.
That's what they call it. And when I was a kid, I'm like, wow. So
I think she was my sexual awakening. So there you go. No, it was a really sexy, funny rom-com. And that was done really well because we all knew where he was going. He was going to get laid. Anyway, Bo Derek, she sells pet care products for bathing your pet. And if you go on Bo Derek Pet Care Products, you'll find like a tearless shampoo for your dog. And that's her company. And she's very passionate about it. She's always been passionate about horses and animal welfare and things like that. But Bo Derek, she did a few movies, but that completely lost interest. She was married to John Derek, who was a very famous director. John Derek was also married to Linda Evans for a while, if anyone remembers Linda from Dynasty. They looked so much alike, those two women. He definitely had a type, John. And he was handsome. He had like Jackson Brown hair, only it was gray. So
right.
Frankie Muniz. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say this is the case for a lot of people, and then they're the ones who make way more money doing their, non-Hollywood gig than they ever would have made in Hollywood. Like, look at Jessica Alba with The Honest Company. Yeah. I mean, she was in like Flipper.
Jessica Simpson.
Yeah, exactly.
Is a gajillionaire with her clothing line. Yes, and everyone made fun of her for, why do they call it, chicken of the sea? Like she didn't understand the tuna thing.
Buffalo wings. And
Jessica.
Is this chicken what I have or is this fish? I know it's tuna, but it says chicken by the sea.
But Jessica Simpson is smarter. She's one smart business person. Frankie Muniz from the very funny, I loved watching the show, Malcolm in the Middle. He is a freaking race car driver for the Jensen Motorsport Company.
No way.
Yeah, he drives race cars.
I didn't know that.
That's weird. I wouldn't have guessed.
Sarah Michelle Gellar. Remember her, Sarah Michelle Gellar?
Yeah.
Vampire Slayer, right?
Yeah, Vampire Slayer. And she's got a food crafting company, and I'm not sure what that means, called Food Stirs. I'm thinking it's like fresh or one of those things where you get those food kits, but I could be completely wrong.
Huh.
Anyway, that's what she's doing. Marissa Tomei is doing fitness videos, and she was with my cousin Vinny. Marissa Tomei, you still see her acting quite a bit. But I'm thinking,
she's still got it.
I think the time has come, you guys, for me to do fitness videos.
Yes,
I will follow.
No, I think, as a 5'3", size 10 human being, I think people need to know, how do I do it? How do I keep this sturdy frame from right? My dad used to say, "You're the sturdiest girl in music. You're just sturdy."
What would sturdy is not something people I never hear that word in reference to somebody's body, but it's hilarious.
My dad said that to me. You're the sturdiest girl in music. Tony Danza, are you ready for this one? Tony Danza teaches 10th grade high school English in Philadelphia.
Okay, that really? I like. That's adorable.
There you go.
Yeah.
So who's the boss?
Vanilla Ice, who I know, Rob, we did a show called Canada Sings. He was the nicest, kindest person. He was respectful. Gosh, he was good looking.
Oh.
Man, he was good looking. He's flipping houses, and you guys may have seen him on the DIY networks but he's a brilliant house flipper. Like, he does a lot of the construction himself. He's really a handy guy. He's got a beautiful family. They've got every animal under the sun at their house. They've got a huge, huge chunk of land. I think he's still in Florida. But when he flips houses, he buys them for like $500,000 and flips them for $10 million. Like, the guy is...
He came on the morning show, the Chum Morning Show, when I was there to promote his house flipping show. And he was a sweetheart. He was a really, he was like fun and affable. And I think he has a pretty good handle on who he was in the 80s and 90s versus now.
He said, Jan, I saved all my money.
Yeah.
He saved all his money. He goes, I knew it. He said, I just knew it. But you look like, guys from that era. The guy with the big pants. Who was that?
MC Hammer.
You can't touch this.
MC The fact that you knew that reference, the guy with the big pants, is fun. How much time do I have left, Adam? Are you pointing at
2
me?
Minutes. No, you have 2 minutes left.
Okay. I always wonder about child actors that were in iconic films. Like, we all know Macaulay Culkin. He had some trouble, but he's come out of it. His little brother was in that great show. The other Culkin brother.
Kieran Culkin. Kieran Culkin is in Succession, my absolute favorite show almost of all time. He plays Fuller in Home Alone. He's the guy that wets the bed.
Yes. Danny Lloyd, who played Danny Torrance in the movie The Shining, that little boy was so terrified, Red Rum. He left the movie industry, and he is a biology professor at Elizabethtown Community and Technical College in Elizabethtown, Kentucky. But he still has people that recognize him all these years later. And he just was like, I didn't say anything about him being traumatized by the movie. And the woman that played in The Exorcist, Linda Blair, was... Oh, yeah. She went through a lot of stuff after that movie. I've never seen The Exorcist, never watched it. But anyway, how did you like that romp through?
I like those.
Celebrity, where are they now kind of stuff. Cool fact about The Exorcist, because I love that movie, is because of what it was at the time. Like, if you I did go to school for film and stuff, so I watched it with a different kind of lens versus just watching it and being scared out of my mind, which I was. But they in the scenes where she's possessed, you can see everyone's breath. And I always loved that detail because I thought it was really visually unsettling without having to mean too much.
Yeah.
And they actually made the rooms ice cold so that you could see everyone's breath. That wasn't done with any special effect or later. It was that cold.
I never plan on seeing that movie. And if you haven't seen it, don't see it. My friend Nigel.
See it. It's great.
He's okay. Anyway, you've been listening to the first episode of 2021 of the Jann Arden podcast. There's nowhere to go but up from here, right, guys?
You got it.
You guys stay safe. This is going to be an unbelievable year of so many firsts. Continue to be kind and wear a mask, social distance. We got a long way to go. But yeah, anyway, thanks for listening. Adam, Caitlin, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
And I'm looking forward to you having your baby, Caitlin. That's lots of great news. And Adam, don't you have any more babies?
I think we're done.
Okay. All right. Toodly-doo, everybody. Thanks for listening.